Spent the whole day yesterday with the Midwest governors, and of course we did have we had a panel with Debbie Durham and entrepreneurs, and I think you all were there for the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we were really pleased with that. And then I was with John Papajohn, and we had his entrepreneurial awards deal at Drake University at noon today. So, but I'm excited about the fact that we have a lot more young people that are interested in staying in Iowa and starting businesses. It's much different than it was when I was governor during the farm crisis of the 80s, and a lot of people were leaving the state. But first of all, agriculture is a lot stronger, but there's also just a lot of other entrepreneurial activity, and I think people see there's a real positive future in Iowa, and there's an opportunity to make money here and to be successful. Why did I come back to do this again? I've been governor for 16 years. I left office and decided to embark on a whole new career as a financial advisor. Passed the Series 7 securities exam and went to work for Robert W. Baird. And then I was serving on the board of Des Moines University. Got an opportunity to apply for and eventually was chosen to be the president of Des Moines University. And I'm proud to say we had a great run there. In 6 years and 3 months, we increased the endowment, we increased the enrollment, we became the first college or university in the country to get the platinum level recognition from the Wellness Council of America for what we did for wellness for faculty, staff, and students. And I had an idea of adding a college of optometry if I had to stay, but I felt a calling to come back and get the state's financial house in order. I was really concerned about the fact that we didn't have a governor that was engaged, especially in economic development, or had a really vision and a plan to manage the budget and see that we're on the right track. So we came back with a really clear, ambitious goal. One is get the state's financial house in order and reduce the size and cost of government. Two, increase job opportunities by 200,000, raise family incomes by 25%, and restore our leadership position in education. And we've also added, we want to be the healthiest state in the nation. Those are pretty ambitious goals. But I think you got to have ambitious goals. You got to try to surround yourself with capable, talented people. We have made great progress in the first goal of getting the state's financial house in order. All times they'd used a lot of one-time money for ongoing expenses. They went on a borrowing spree, and we've stopped all of that. And we spent 97% of revenue last year. The money that significant money had been taken from the cash reserve and economic emergency account. They had been diminished substantially. They've been restored. We've ended you will see in the next probably week or so the final figures for the fiscal year that ended end of June. We ended with a surplus of about $250 million, and we restored the money in the cash reserve and economic emergency account. So we're in a pretty healthy situation going forward. It's a great contrast to our neighbor Illinois and California and a lot of other states that have big financial problems. And their problem is even worse because not only do they have the budget problem and they're $4 billion behind in paying their bills on time, they also have a big unfunded liability on their pension system, and they have a lot of debt per capita. We are a low debt state. In fact, one of the major business publications rated the financial health of the states recently, and we were second best, and Illinois was second worst. So we think that is a good thing going into the future, but there's some things we need to do. Our tax structure is not competitive in some areas. The corporate income taxes and the property tax, especially commercial property taxes, very high. We tax it at 100% of market value. Residents, farmland's based on productivity, and residential is tied to that, and it was only taxed about 50% of market value. So we think it's critically important we make some of those changes. Now I want to talk specifically about you as young entrepreneurs. We want to look at what we can do And one of the first things I did is I signed an executive order to say on all new regulations, we need to look at a jobs impact statement. Is this going to facilitate or help business growth, or is it going to be an impediment? Is it going to place barriers and unintended barriers in the way of entrepreneurs? Secondly, we're going to be reviewing all the existing regulations with the same idea in mind. We also are looking at what are the proactive things that government can do to encourage and facilitate business decision makers to choose our state. We changed our economic development approach to a public-private partnership and created the Partnership for Economic Progress, and then the government part of that is called the Economic Development Authority. I chose Debbie Durham, who's a very proactive and very effective professional developer to head that. The Lieutenant Governor and I both have been very hands-on involved. I know she's been here. She's in Germany right now. She'll be getting back on Sunday. I'm leaving to do a little vacation on the coast of Norway. So we're leaving on Sunday night, my wife and I, with a couple other couples. But the Lieutenant Governor and I and Debbie are all actively involved. And I guess what we want to do is say, what can we do as government to encourage and facilitate the growth of your startup businesses? What are the barriers and what are the obstacles that you continue to see? And is there a role that we can play in trying to help break down some of those, or maybe even, if nothing, facilitate introducing you to the right kind of people that can be helpful, and angel investors or whoever they might be. I had the honor of serving on a couple of John Papa John's company boards, Advanced Analytical up in Ames, and also ConMed that provides medical services for people in county jails. That's actually a public company now. Yeah. But it's kind of interesting. With that, we're working very hard to try to get a legislature that will work with us on these critical issues. And I've had some challenges with the present Senate leadership, and I'm hopeful we'll get a more favorable Senate to work with in the coming years. And yeah, we're working on growing all kinds of industry and business, but the thing that is new and different from when I was governor before is this entrepreneurial spirit and the amount of young people that are interested in actually taking the risk to start a business in Iowa. And so I want to do all I can to support and encourage you in those endeavors. So with that, let's just open it for your questions, comments, suggestions. Don't be bashful. Yes, sir.
Hey, I met you actually in Ottumwa, Iowa a few months ago. And one of the things I'm still concerned about is we've got this division between what's happening in government and what's happening in the real world, right? And I sometimes wonder, like, in the entrepreneurial community, we have this problem with there's and that doesn't exist. I can go talk to Kristen anytime I want.
Yep.
I can go talk to Kristen anytime I want, right? Yep. So what I'm curious is, like, how do we bridge that gap? Because I don't really think there should be a separation between that. And then how do we encourage more young people to realize that that gap doesn't really exist?
Well, word of mouth, I think, is the best thing. First of all, tell your friends and colleagues, you met with the governor, you met with the lieutenant governor, you met with Debbie Durham, and these people, and we do answer phone calls, and we do answer emails, and we're accessible. And we go all over the state. Just like you said, we met in Ottumwa. The lieutenant governor and I made a commitment to go to every county in Iowa every year. And we're particularly focused on economic development. So if the subject is got to do with economic development, that's something we're going to try to give priority to. So you can help us get the word out on that. And also, if you do have a problem, in fact, one of the reasons when we're going around the state, if there's a problem with a department or agency or somebody lower in the bureaucracy that's serving as a roadblock, we want to hear it. And we'll be on the cell phone after that meeting calling that agency director and saying, what's going on here and why is this happening? And I found it. We're trying to change the whole culture of government. A lot of people in government kind of looked at it as kind of a gotcha mentality. How can we
throw roadblocks in the way, and how can we, and our approach is to say, no, we want to be a facilitator, and we respect and recognize our role to protect the health, safety, and well-being of the citizens. We have that responsibility, but let's try to do it in a way that is unobtrusive as possible and doesn't create a bunch of unintended consequences and really destroy people's chance to create a new business or take an idea and make it a successful venture. Yes, sir.
Question for you. I'm a PhD candidate up at Iowa State. We're working on a national survey on STEM students and some of the factors that keep students from getting into the STEM fields, which is a big issue here in Iowa, as you know.
Yep.
And you guys have been a strong advocate of trying to get some awareness regarding
Right.
the STEM fields. And so my question to you is, with all this talk about education reform, where does the K-12 pipeline fit into the STEM niche? Because that's a really, from my perspective as a faculty member at a four-year institution, that's a really big.
We got to start early, and we got to make people aware of the job opportunities in the STEM fields. Now, there are more jobs and better jobs available in STEM, and yet we have a lower percentage going into STEM in Iowa than in the other states. That is something we want to change. Now, the good news is this. A year ago, in September, I signed an executive order to establish the STEM Council, and of course, Ben Allen and Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds are chairing it. There's 40 people on it. We have a really good diversity of people involved in that. They've already moved very quickly to these 6 hubs and all of that. The Lieutenant Governor and I are also conducting town hall meetings in communities across the state to try to raise public awareness. And the legislature appropriated $4.7 million, so we were able to get bipartisan support to do that. I think we made great progress in a very short period of time. We have a long ways to go, I'll be the first to tell you that. But we're looking at how we can really aggressively get the word out and get people thinking about STEM at an earlier age. That is critically important. I think that's and that's also, I think, fits in with our whole education reform and the idea of how important, science, technology, engineering, and math is to the future economic success of the state. Yes, sir.
Thank you again for coming to Startup City. Thank you for the Midwest Governors Association and the emphasis on entrepreneurship, because the good news is we can do what we do anywhere in the country.
Yep.
We're very fortunate that way. And we decided to do it in the Midwest, and there's no barriers really for us doing that. One thing that was mentioned up on the panel, I think during multiple of the panels, is the shortage of easily accessible second level
Yep.
venture capital. We've addressed somewhat angel capital funding,
Yep.
and there are a lot of nice rich farmers with money under their mattresses.
Right now, we're better than it was in the 80s. Yeah.
That's true, that's true. So they're starting to shake that loose a little bit. But the second piece is harder because it requires a much longer attention span than angel investors.
Yep.
10 to 12 years. So the question I guess I have for you, and this is not an easy one, which is, and Debbie and I go lock horns on this, how do we keep an administrative economic development posture that lasts longer than a single administration?
Yep.
So we don't scare away. I mean, like we've done with, back during your first term, all the way through till now, how many different economic development approaches has there been, and what sort of external face does that put on Iowa as an investable state to professional venture funds and outside private capital?
Well, let me tell you a success in economic development that goes back to, well, first of all, when I was first governor, we're in the farm crisis, period. It was a very difficult time. You may recall this.
Yes, I do.
Some of you were pretty young during this time, but land values in that period, 83, 4, 5, and 6 dropped 63%. We closed 38 banks. It was a very, very stressful, difficult time. But we worked very much on diversifying the economy, and one of the things we put we focus on then was insurance and financial services. And we made a real effort to attract more international and grow the existing ones and bring ones from other areas. And we had significant success in that. We also looked at investing in bioscience research. And we had a 3x5 program. We ramped up research at Iowa State
in that area, because we thought that made a lot of sense. And we were one of the early ones to focus on renewable fuels and some of those things. And so we've had some real success. One of the things that we did, we found an uncompetitive situation was we had property tax on industrial machinery and equipment. So if you're looking at a big investment, and the poster child for this was IPSCO Steel.
Oh, okay.
IPSCO Steel, and it was a $600 million investment, and they could have put it anywhere along either the Ohio or the Mississippi River. We ended up getting it in Iowa because we promised that we would not tax the machinery and equipment. We'd already made a deal the year previously for Cedar River Paper, which is a big paper recycler in Cedar Rapids. And I said, wait a minute, every one of these deals that comes along, we can't say, well, we're gonna make a special deal for you. We need to do this for everybody. So we got rid of it for the new, and then we phased it out for the existing, and it worked. And we have 41 ethanol plants in Iowa today. If we had that annual tax, you wouldn't have that. It wouldn't have been. And there are many other capital invested industries that have located here because we did that. That's the reason why I say I look at our uncompetitiveness in the commercial property tax, and I'm saying, because once you go out and start, even if you're a renter, it's built into a net lease, and you're paying that heavy property tax. And Iowa generally is a relatively low cost place to do business, but this commercial property tax is the third highest in the country. So that's the reason why we focused on that. It's something we think we can do. Also, we changed the structure of economic development so that we would have a public-private partnership that hopefully will survive. Now, I can't help what happened in the subsequent years when I wasn't in office, but when I was in office, every year we tried to say, okay, how do we improve the competitiveness of the tax and business climate? We worked on it for 16 years. And the neat thing is, I was just up at Spirit Lake recently, and we got a plant up there that Polaris has. Okay, we attracted them because they were going to make watercraft there. Never made any money with watercraft, but they're making all-terrain vehicles and motorcycles, and they just bought Indian Motorcycle now, and they had a picture of me there when we. And that's the thing I'm proud of is we worked to get them. They've had to change to be competitive, but they are, and they're growing. And so that's the kind of thing I think, but what I want to do is like every year, okay, let's see what we can identify this year to make Iowa incrementally better and more competitive. And we identify barriers that we can break down. We can identify maybe ways we can change the tax structure. Trying to address this issue in terms of the second level of financing. It's a difficult and it's a challenging issue, but we've got to try to see what we can do to incent that. And there have been different approaches that have been tried. I don't think there's any single silver bullet to that, but I think what we have to do is we have to, and this was talked about yesterday too, we need to recognize that just because you've tried something and it failed, it didn't work, that's not a failure. We got to look at that as you've gained some valuable experience that makes it possible to be more successful the next time around. We heard a story like that today at the Papa John luncheon. And this guy happened to be somebody who was in the refinance business and started in about 2007. Well, the timing was just bad. It's just like those people that bought farmland in 1980. I don't care how smart you are. If you bought farmland in 1980, and it drops 63% in value, I don't care how good a farmer you are, you ain't gonna make it. Now, if you bought it in 1986, boy, you look like a genius today, because look where it's gone since '86. So, but I think that's the thing we've got to do is we got to see what we can do, and I don't have a real easy answer to that, but I'm interested in looking at what's worked elsewhere. A lot of times what you do is say, okay, what's worked in some other place, and let's see if we can copy it.
I think what you see in successful environments, for example, the venture community in
Yep.
Northern California, although California is in a whole world of hurt of its
Yep.
own, at least on that level, they really don't change a whole lot at a legislative level, and that allows the private sector to continue to do what it does best.
So you got stability. What
That's
I
it.
call stability and predictability.
That's it.
So let's look at what can we do to try to establish that stability and predictability in this area.
Please.
Yeah, I agree with you. It needs to be something, and that's one of the reasons why I said, you know, that was the benefit of being governor for 16 years. Because well, and I just show,
Yeah, long enough to
one other
say.
example of this is this. Okay, we have a personal friend, the state of Iowa has a personal friend in the next leader of China, Xi Jinping. Now, it just so happened, we established a sister state with Hebei province of China in 1983, my first year as governor. Governor Zhang Zhuguang came here, invited me to go there. I went there in 84. It's like going back in time. People are riding bicycles. No buildings more than 6 stories tall. We rode a old steam locomotive from Beijing to Shijiazhuang, but we got a wonderful reception. They had a band. They met us at the train depot with a band. They presented my wife with a big bouquet of flowers, and we said, you know, these Chinese communists aren't so bad. They're our friends, you know. So we made friends with them. The biggest country in the world, and we figured we anticipated there would be opportunities there. Well, it so happens that a delegation from China, from sister state, came here in '85. It was led by a young man in his early 30s named Xi Jinping, who was local party leader and within just what would be the equivalent of a county in that province. And now, I was there last September, and I had the honor of meeting with him, and now the Vice President of China, and in the Great Hall of the People, just off of Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said to me is, Governor Branstad, I was in your office on the 29th day of April, 1985, and you assigned Luca Baroni from Economic Development to take me all over the state of Iowa. Sarah Landy was in charge of the sister states. They did a wonderful job of hosting us in Muscatine. I stayed with the Dvorak family, and he had all these glowing things to say about the wonderful people of Iowa, the friendliness, the hospitality, and how well he was treated. And he says, when I think of America, I think of the kind of people I met in Iowa. This guy's going to be the next leader of China next month. He's going to become the leader of the party, and then in March he becomes the leader of the government. Wow. And he calls us his old friend. So when so after that I come to the idea, well, let's have a reunion and invite him to come and see the wonderful people he met here in '85. So we did that reunion in Muscatine. He was so impressed with that he said, I want to have a reunion with the 4 guys that came with me in '85 and the old friends from Iowa in Beijing, and I'll pay your way. As they did. And we went there in May, and he planned our whole itinerary, and we had dinner with him, a big banquet with him. His wife, who is an accomplished singer and almost never goes to these things, was there. So now here's China. They purchase more soybeans than any other country in the world. They're purchasing corn and pork. They're a major trading partner, and I think we in Iowa, because we have this long-time relationship, and that's really important in that part of the world, it's a great opportunity for us. And so, and that's where we talk about continuity, and just the fact that I was back as governor. I said when we hosted the dinner for him here at the Capitol, at the state dinner, I said, you know, I was the governor when he came in '85. Well, I'm back as governor, but look at where he's gone, and being the local leader is going to be the next leader of the biggest country in the world. So, but it's nice. I like to say it's treat people well because you never know where they might be someday. You know, and I think of this. Some of the people I've met, the entrepreneurs, Gary Vermeer. You know, he was a farmer who saw some need for, well, I think it was the hoist wagon was the first thing, and the big round baler and all this.
Too lazy to bail his own hay.
Yeah. So, but he built this great company, Vermeer. I grew up on a farm between Forest City and Lake Mills, and went to high school in Forest City, and a guy named John K. Hansen started Winnebago Industries.
Now, there are a lot of, they tell the story about the Helgesons in Lake Mills that owned the lumber yard up there, that he owed him a bunch of money, and he offered to pay it in stock, and they turned it down because he'd gone broke a couple times previously, you know. But then those people that did, if they'd have taken the payment in stock, they'd have been millionaires. So, but that's the entrepreneurial, you know, I've seen in my lifetime. And it's even, well, you think of it today, and you think of some of the most successful companies didn't even exist. It's like,
Yeah, the skyscrapers here, right?
Exactly.
They were all startups not too long ago.
that's right, that's right. Well, some of them, like the Principal Financial Group, started out as an insurance company probably 100 years ago. But some of them moved on to
What's your line, Tej? Nobody moved here to take a job when the country was, or when the state was formed?
Well, the state was formed by a entrepreneur. When Julian Dubuque moved here, he wasn't looking for a job. He was looking to mine lead.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And now,
Is that our DNA?
yes, sir.
One of the things that I feel like we've done a great job of in our high schools is promoting higher education and encouraging those students to pursue four-year degrees. But one of the things I feel like that does is discourages those students who are more interested in like a skilled trade or going straight to work after they get out of school. With the higher regulations in the construction industry, and it seems like the lack of education, industrial technology, and the shortage of education resources, and then the projected shortage of skilled laborers in the next 5 to 10 years here in the state of Iowa, what do we do to turn that around?
Well, we've got a new program we're just embarking on called Skilled Iowa. And this is something that really, Bill Knapp and Teresa Whaler are really partnered to do this. So it's a kind of a public-private partnership. Knapp and Jim County and others have contributed some money to help get this started. And Teresa's doing, and what it's doing is a couple of things. One is taking the existing workforce that's out of work, because there are jobs all over the state of Iowa where it's welders or people in construction or whatever that are good paying jobs that aren't being filled because you can't find people with skills for them. So what we're trying to do is help upgrade the skills, and there's actually what do you call it? There's a certification process that you can go, and we are encouraging people to go through that, and actually saying if you're on unemployment, you can still draw your unemployment and do this, but then if you get certified, then you become employable. But we also need to work in the schools on this and making people aware there's great opportunities there. The problem we've got is we still are treating the education system like this was the 19th or 20th century. And you only needed a certain amount of people, you know, and so even if you didn't have a lot of skills, you could do root jobs in a manufacturing. But today, those require, you know, problem-solving skills and managing robotics or computers and all kinds of stuff. So that's what, and you're exactly right. We've got to change. We've got to recognize that we've really got to educate the entire population. That doesn't mean they have to have a 4-year degree, but they're going to have to. That's where STEM is so important, and making sure that young people that are not going to go on for a 4-year degree, and a lot of them shouldn't, need to be able to also, though, know that there's an avenue for them to get the right skill set. And that, I think it's got to be done kind of in a public-private partnership like we're doing with Skilled Iowa.
Governor. Yep. On, we've heard a lot about these jobs could take place anywhere.
Yep.
Right? The entrepreneurs could work anywhere. And a lot of the work that, you know, when you're doing economic development, you see that Iowa companies could actually operate in a lot of different places
Sure.
and they choose to be here. Well, one of the underlying themes there is the technology and how these folks can do the jobs that they do largely because they're able to be connected.
Right.
Yeah, when we look at what's going on with the overall IP network, the internet infrastructure, it's coming under a crushing demand. More and more things are connected. I hate to think how many things are connected in this room right now. And actually, it's projected in about 5 years, we're going to have more traffic than the ability for the network to carry it. That's a federal issue. Then in the past, you've been pretty outspoken and been able to assemble coalitions when you could look at an issue and say, rural areas, the Midwest, you just came from the Midwest Governors Association. When you're disproportionately affected by an issue, that you can find a way to speak out and carry a bigger voice, whether it's ag, transportation, infrastructure, healthcare. This is an issue that we need to be looking at from an economic development perspective, because for us to compete, we have to do a little more. We have to be a little more connected. We have to be able to have a little bit more reach. If federal policymakers don't approach this the right way, they're not going to be able, there's not going to be the private sector investment to get that network going. I think that that's something that we need to be looking at. In the past we look at transportation budgets. We look at these big dollars that come out. I think we got to be looking at how do we, as Iowans, stay connected so we remain open for business for startups and bigger.
No, I think you're exactly right, and that we need, and many of our rural areas don't have the high-speed connections that they need. That's critically important. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we built the ICN in the first state, the Iowa Communication Network, because I saw that way back then. If we're going to be, we need to do that, and we can provide distance education. We can connect up our. But the problem we had a real fight, as you know, between the Rural Telephone Association and whatever. But all of that's changed. Basically, the land lines are pretty much going to be gone. And those were great cash cows for the telephone companies, but they wanted to hang on to that, and unfortunately, I think that was kind of trying to hold on to the past. We need to instead look at what's the opportunities of the future, and how do we tie our wagon to that.
Speaking of
Yeah.
the death of the landlines, it's a funny story that we had the president of Kosovo arriving.
Yeah.
You met with her.
We sure did. We had dinner.
Yeah.
We hosted her for dinner at Terrace Hill. Yeah.
So right before the dinner, I believe she was here, and Secret Service calls and says, "We'd like to tap your phone line. So can you give us the numbers, and so we can tap the phone lines in case there's a bomb threat or something?" And I had to say, "Well, I'd love to, but we don't have a landline."
This entire office, we don't have one.
Well, that makes the case. One of the things they did a flower arrangement for the dinner we held, and the president of Kosovo is the same age as my oldest son. So that tells you something. Now, but they made a floral arrangement in the color and shape of their flag, which I thought was a pretty kind of a nice. So I think she was pretty impressed with it. We hope to. I think we may go there next year.
Yeah, we've been working with them since.
Yes.
I do have a question going back to the STEM conversation. I'm glad to be serving on the South Central Region STEM Hub, and one of the things we recently found out was that out of the 4.5 million, much of that money was going to be spent with the scale-up programs that schools and colleges and educators could subscribe to. We thought 300 or so applicants would come in statewide. The 4.5 would be distributed, and much to our surprise, 900 applications are coming.
The lieutenant governor told me she was pretty blown away with that. 3 times as many as was anticipated.
Right.
But
So
that shows you the interest.
the interest is great, and our goal is to try and figure out any way we can possibly serve all 900, or at least as many of the
as possible.
qualified applications as possible. What can we do with the legislature to make sure that these workers, these innovators of tomorrow have the money today, whether it's 4.5 or whatever the amount might be?
Well, first of all, we need to communicate that. We got 900 applicants. That tells me there's a lot of interest. Legislators need to know that. And so these people that are involved in it, people like you that are on the hub and whatever, we need to communicate that to legislators. I mean, they have the ultimate power of the purse, and so they appropriated the 4.7 million. Obviously, they were convinced that it was something that was worthwhile. But now we need to show them how the money is being used and why it's important, and how hopefully we can improve and augment it in the future.
Are they prepared to wait 16 years to see the ROI on it?
Well, that's the problem. I think that's
Because
the
that's what it'll
biggest.
take, right?
The biggest problem.
but
Well, and
I think we need to sell them on, this is where we are and this is how it grows.
Yeah.
But they also need to recognize the return on investment is long-term. But think of what we did, I'm saying, what we did back in the 80s in investing in bioscience research is now starting to pay off in a very big way.
Yes.
So all you have to do is go to Eddyville or go to Fort Dodge or go up there, Valent Biosciences, and you're seeing huge investments being made in things that are being produced from corn and soybeans, and it's a wonderful, those are great jobs, big investments, but is what we did in the 80s, I think,
Yeah.
is we're getting the return on that now. And that's the big problem in politics. Most people have a very short-term perspective. And part of it is they have to stand for election often, but I do think we got to just keep them informed so they can see the benefit of it and hopefully buy into the fact that, there's not going to be an immediate return on this, but this has some really significant long-term benefits.
So my daughter
Right, will be the beneficiary.
is going to be she's the class of 2020
Yeah.
from high school. So she's workforce 2025. Hasn't seen anything from the STEM Council yet.
Yeah.
So this is the reason, before Ted started, after I left the STEM Council, I said, stop talking, start doing something now, because the longer you wait, the longer we have for that ROI to show everybody that we were headed in the right direction by making this investment.
I think that's one of the things that's the scale up, the way it is structured. The students will be affected by that 4.7 this year. It's not talking about next year or the year after. It is impact at this time and teacher training continuously to improve on these programs.
So those students and their parents need to communicate that so that legislators can see this is an investment in the future. It's a good investment.
And how can we make sure that we're not our own roadblocks? How can we make sure that these systems are open to that? We're not spending all this money and then creating the roadblocks that go through.
Well, that's a good question.
Right?
Christian? Yeah.
Governor, chances are that someone in this room or some company represented by this room is going to have a big cash out. They're going to be very successful. They may be purchased, they may go public, they may do something along those lines. You've talked about reforming commercial tax policy for here, but in our field, in technology, there's a great deal of mobility. You can work anywhere in the world.
Right.
How do we keep capital that will come to individuals and organizations as part of that cash out in Iowa for reinvestment?
Well, that's where we've got to reduce that tax burden so people don't say, well, now that I've got a lot of money, I'm going to move to Texas or Florida because they don't have an income tax, and we have a very high income tax in Iowa. So I think we've got to continue to look at ways we can reduce that tax burden to make Iowa more competitive. And we also need to appeal to people's, if you made your money here, this is one of the things that, and I understand why people do it. When your lawyer or accountant says you can build a house in Florida and pay for it just with the money you're saving by changing your residence from Iowa to Florida, you can still come back and spend less than 6 months of the year in Iowa, but as long as you're a Florida resident, you're not going to have to pay income tax. Well, I know of a number of people that have moved because of that. So that's one of the things we need to do. But I know a number of people like John Papajohn who have stayed and given back in a very significant way, whether it's charitable contributions or what he's done with the entrepreneurial centers. I think has been a wonderful investment in the future of our state. And I've also seen other people that have done that.
Jim County.
Jim County is a good example. His partner didn't, but he did.
Yeah.
He stayed and he's reinvested. There's many other people too, even in smaller communities. I know people that have grown up in, the woman who grew up in Perry, Iowa, who basically bought the Hotel Pattee and restored that.
Great breakfast.
Yeah, there's a guy down in let's see,
I think it's in Eppinus County down in Centerville, that he actually lives in New York, but he grew up there, and he has refurbished a hotel there, invested in a number of other things in that community. So that's the other thing, and I was, universities do a great job of this, looking for alumni that have done well and getting them to give back and establish scholarships. We need to also try to encourage entrepreneurs that have grown up in Iowa, that have made their money here, to look at, and maybe what they can do is be some of the ones that can help, be the angel investors or be even that next level of investors, so they know how the struggle they went through. Now, hopefully, they can be a mentor, so they can financially, but they can also probably be a mentor individually as well. That's the thing I want to do, is try to get people feel, say, okay, state of Iowa helped me and work to foster my success, and now I've been successful and sold the company or it's gone public or whatever, and I have the resource. I mean, another great example is Don Lamberti, Casey's General Stores. His story is a really interesting one. He ended up, his dad had a small gas station on the north side of Des Moines, and his dad's health went bad, and he at a really early age took it over the business, and he built Casey's General Stores. They went public, and he's still, he's retired. I think he's maybe the chairman emeritus, but I remember when Casey's stock was worth $15 when I was working as a financial advisor, and what's it worth now? 70 something? That's not that many years ago. It's gone from 15 to 70. But Don's another guy that gives very generously to a lot of good causes. And he's the kind of guy that might be a potential angel investor in things too. Okay.
How do you encourage our regions, universities to focus more on developing Iowa companies?
Well, one of the reasons that Stephen Leith was chosen to be the president of Iowa State, he comes from a research background. He gets it. And I think you got a chance to see him in action yesterday.
Yeah, we just
And I really do think, and now we're going to have a new University of Northern Iowa president chosen. And I specifically chose the people that I put on the Board of Regents with that in mind. Now, Regents, there's 9 of them on the Board of Regents, and they serve 6-year terms. So you don't get to change it on the first day you become governor. But I made a specific goal to try to move as quickly as we could in that direction. And I think hopefully the regents are going to choose the right leadership there and the institutions. Plus, let me tell you, it's so much better today than it was in the 1980s. When I came in as governor in the 1980s, Bob Parks was the president of Iowa State University. He did not think the regents should be involved in economic development. He resisted my idea of having the research park in conjunction with Iowa State. It wasn't until we got Gordon Eaton, the next president, that we got that done. And now, you got a new president that totally understands. He's going to have the research park report directly to him. So we've come a long ways. Now, we're still playing catch up with North Carolina, but we just hired a guy that was in charge of research in North Carolina to be the president of Iowa State. So I don't know if we can get that kind of, but that's the kind of people we want to get in those key positions. I think he's got great connections, private sector wise, to raise money for Iowa State, and it's already, I think, got a lot of assets going for it. But we need to do the same thing at the University of Iowa and the University of Northern Iowa, and the private schools can play a role in that too. Maybe not as big a role. They don't have quite the the research capacity in this. We're about out of time, I guess.
Final thoughts or words?
Yeah, please, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us candidly. Any closing thoughts you might have?
Well, just first of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being involved in this in a startup city, and for basically starting businesses here in Iowa. I want to be on your side, on your team,
We want you to succeed, because if you succeed, the state succeeds. And I know it's not government that's going to create the jobs and grow the economy. It's private sector business. And the great thing about America is this has always been the place where we, because of the free enterprise system and the opportunities that are here, people with an idea, people that are willing to work hard and innovative and take the risks can be successful, can make money, can build successful businesses. That's the American dream. And I want to do all I can to support and encourage that. And what's exciting to me is we didn't have rooms full of people like this in the 80s. They didn't, it was like I said, first of all, I had to fight the university presidents that didn't want a research part. And then we had people leaving the state because they thought agriculture is a dying business, And now it's the opposite. Agriculture is one of the strongest parts of the economy. We've got a growing population to serve out there, and we have companies like China that's buying all kinds of the stuff we produce in big amounts. Well, again, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. If you do have a problem or an impediment that we might be able to help you address, don't hesitate to call me, the Lieutenant Governor, Debbie Durham. We are sincerely committed to this, and we're trying to devote a significant share of our time every day to economic development. And we see that an important part of that, and an important component of that, is the entrepreneur startup businesses, because I don't know which one of you is going to have that great success, but hopefully it's going to be multi.
All of them, right?
Yeah, all of them. Realistically, not everyone is. Yeah, well, but that's okay. I mean, you have to have that attitude. Plus, sometimes it's not the first time, but it's the second or third one that really takes off. And not, it's like my old football coach used to say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So that's what we want to do. Thank you very much.